All right, Purnima, thanks so much for joining in and giving us all those details. So moving on, as part of our series Engaging the Dragon, CNBC TV 18 Shireen Ban caught up with top industry leaders of India and asked them about what lessons we need to learn from China with regard to the Make in India theme. Here's an excerpt of that conversation.
You know, China, I think, has a 20-year head start on manufacturing. It starts with the overall approach of the country towards supporting manufacturing, towards recognizing the importance of manufacturing, and creating an environment that is extremely friendly to manufacturing. You see, every global company is manufacturing in China. We have, obviously, to learn on the scale side, because the scale here is out of proportion to what we're used to. But I think there are also lessons that China can learn from India. I think the way we set up facilities, the way we look at costs, competitiveness, and, you know, the risk versus reward, because we live in a more real world rather than in a world where I think you have a lot more support from the system. And I think that in some ways makes us very competitive and maybe a little more averse to risk taking, but it doesn't make us any less competitive in the long term. I think the future is where we can negate or neutralize some of the disadvantages we have in India, especially on the infrastructure side, whether it's invested capital, and use that to compete effectively long term.
Pawan Goenka, let me ask you, we know the problems facing Make in India, the infrastructure challenges and so on and so forth. But what about Make in India and using the India IPR advantage and combining that with Make in India? Because so far, whatever you've heard from the government really pertains to let's manufacture in India. But what about combining the strengths that we actually have on the human capital side, the IPR side, and then developing for India, developing for the world, not just made in India?
Well, this is my favorite topic. I have said many times that Make in India is not about manufacturing in India, and if we try and do that, we will not be able to compete with the old manufacturing countries like China and many new countries that are emerging, which will become a manufacturing powerhouse. We have to leverage IPR, we have to leverage the knowledge base that we have in India, and therefore focus on manufacturing without a focus on science and technology, without a focus on innovation, will take us in a direction where I don't think we can compete. And therefore we should not try and emulate a model of China. We have to develop our own model where the manufacturing, the human skill that we have, the human skill that we need to develop beyond what we have, comes together with the engineering, R&D, technology ability that we have, and then make a wholesome package which is unique and better than what anybody else can offer to us.
But Professor Velamuri, let me ask you this, because this notion that China is a low-cost manufacturer, that notion China, or that impression China is hoping to correct by spending increasingly large budgets on R&D. In fact, I was having a conversation with someone who suggested that China could perhaps be spending more on R&D than the United States of America, which is in that sense the innovation capital, over the next few years. So China has realized the shortfalls or the pitfalls of the low-cost manufacturing hub model and is now upping the scale more in terms of value, isn't it?
Definitely, definitely. So if you look at the both the government spending and the private sector spending on science and technology, on research and development, the investments are huge. If you look at the patenting activity of Chinese companies, it is in multiples of what we are doing in India, both patents registered domestically and patents filed for internationally. And China is clearly making a very strong play to become a value-added manufacturing economy. That transition is going to take time. I do agree with my co-panelists that India has one advantage, which China also had, and that is that we have a huge local market. And if our industrial policy is aligned to the needs of our economy, which is we need to provide employment to hundreds of millions of people in the organized sector, which we have not done until now. I think we have a great opportunity to do so.
You here today signed MOUs in China. What do you think can be done to actually forge a greater collaboration beyond project financing and infrastructure financing?
Basically, India and China have a relationship which has some strange dimensions. We in India do recognize that the Chinese manufacturers have some distinct advantages over us because of the model they have. On the other hand, we have the aspirations to grow, especially with regard to the manufactured goods. So if we open our borders to them, we fear that they will completely cut the goods.
Yeah.
And our manufacturing like a baby in the cradle. So if we don't sort of protect our industry, it's going to be dead right in the cradle. So therefore we have this kind of a dilemma, how to go about it. The fact remains that we have an unequal playing field.
Yes. When
it comes to India and China.
Yeah.
China, for example, you have a state-controlled currency, and secondly, there are package of incentives that give, whereas in India we have to fend for ourselves. I think this is at the heart of the problem.
Time to slip in a short break then, but on the other side, we'll get you a quick check on the derivatives market, also stocks to watch. Stay tuned.